everyone, and welcome to the Surgical Ergonomics Podcast, where we will be discussing everything related to surgical and procedural ergonomics, the people, ideas, and technology that will help enhance your physical wellness and career longevity. I am your host, Geeta Lal. I'm an academic endocrine surgeon, speaker, consultant, and surgical ergonomics coach. Having experienced work-related musculoskeletal injury myself, I am committed to increasing awareness of and developing solutions to counteract the impact of poor ergonomics on the professional and personal lives of healthcare workers in procedural areas. Today's episode is sponsored by Q Optics. Surgeons, your neck shouldn't pay the price for precision. It's time to demand loupes that are built for you. Q Optics is more than magnification. Custom crafted through the lens loupes engineered and tailored to your unique facial structure and surgical posture. The ultra lightweight titanium build eliminates pressure points, red marks, and the chronic neck and shoulder pain caused by heavy, bulky, outdated optics. With the exclusive TrueFit measurement system, each pair is precisely tailored to your unique facial structure, delivering a customized stress-free fit and all-day comfort. The Ergo Direct Vision loupes with up to 60 degrees of declination keep neck flexion under 15 degrees, or go zero flexion with the Ergo Angle Deflection loupes for a straight-ahead gaze and complete ergonomic relief. And with crisp edge-to-edge clarity within an expansive peripheral view around the telescopes, your field stays wide and unobstructed. Transform your OR experience today with a 45-day trial and exclusive pricing for listeners of this podcast. Visit qoptics.com/Dr. Lal to learn more and schedule your demo with a local representative. And again, don't forget to use the code Dr. Lal to claim your discount. Your work demands precision. Your body deserves relief. Q Optics, designed for comfort, built for performance. By the way, Q Optics has also provided us with an Ergo Angle Deflection loupes and headlight combo giveaway. The details will be provided at the end of this episode, so stay tuned. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Surgical Ergonomics Podcast. In today's episode, I am really thankful and delighted to have as our guest Dr. Paul Fedak. Dr. Fedak is a cardiac surgeon and director of the Libin Cardiovascular Institute at the University of Calgary in Canada. He is a scientist and a physician writer who leads at the forefront of medical innovation in academic medicine. His work explores the intersection of excellence, identity, and healing, especially the silent cost of high achievement in healthcare. Through his leadership, writing, and speaking, Paul invites a new conversation about moral injury, burnout, and the path from performance to presence, helping to reconnect medicine with its deeper purpose. A very good afternoon to you, Paul, and welcome to the podcast.
Good afternoon, Geeta, and thank you for having me.
Paul, just to kind of get us started in today's conversation, I was wondering if you would just be open to telling our listeners a little bit about your background, kind of where you grew up, where you did your training, and how long you've been at your current role.
Sure, absolutely. I'm from Canada, and I was born and raised in the Toronto area, did an undergraduate degree in neuroscience at the University of Toronto, and then went to medical school in Toronto. And during medical school, I was assigned to the Toronto General Hospital, which has a really robust cardiac surgery program and a really robust surgical scientist program. I got to see open heart surgery for the first time. And after seeing it, I was so fascinated by, how you could technically do something like that. It just seemed impossible. And cardiac surgeons that I met seemed larger than life. And what I often say is, how would somebody not want to be a cardiac surgeon after, seeing that and experiencing it? So that became my lifelong goal and dream. And I really wanted to train in cardiac surgery in Toronto. And I was fortunate that I was selected for the program. During my cardiac surgery training, I also pursued a PhD through that University of Toronto Surgical Scientist program, which is really outstanding. So I've always been committed to both the academic part of cardiac surgery, doing research, teaching, education, as well as clinical excellence, which, every surgeon has to be committed to. That was really the focus of my career. When I finished my training in Toronto, I decided to go to Chicago for some further training in heart transplant and mechanical assist
Hmm.
device. And then an amazing opportunity came up for me in Western Canada, in Calgary, Alberta. And, at that time, things were really booming. It's an oil town. And they were building a brand new research tower, and there were a lot of resources for somebody like me. And they didn't have
Hmm.
an academic cardiac surgeon. They had never had one. And it was a
Hmm.
great opportunity for me to go and help build something and help develop a program. They had a new training program at that
Hmm.
time, just started training residents. So it was a great opportunity for somebody like myself to go and develop my career. And I've been in Calgary, I believe, for 18 or 19 years now. And through all of that, I developed a translational research lab, trained many students, master's, PhD, etc. Many of them are surgical scientists, from the training program, which is great. So sort of reproducing that Toronto model in
Model.
a new environment to some degree, not at the same level, but
Of course, yeah.
it's
You've
it's
been
made
you've
it.
been stupendously successful. You are
Thank you.
being very humble. Okay.
Thanks. Well, it's worked out well, and
Yeah.
we've been able to train a number of students, which has been fantastic. And I've had a great career, and I, ended up like many at mid-career, you start looking for other opportunities to grow and learn. So I got into leadership. I became the
Mhm.
head of the clinical department of cardiac sciences, which is cardiology, cardiac surgery,
Mhm.
cardiac critical care, and anesthesia. So big department. Also became the director of the Heart Institute, which is more focused on fundraising and community engagement, education, and research. So I've been able, as a leader to explore the whole gamut of, healthcare leadership and innovation. I entered that role just before COVID hit. So I really got thrown in the deep end in many
Yeah.
ways in
Trial
the
by
leadership
fire.
role. Oh,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I've learned a ton, and it really, expanded my horizons and grew individually in those roles. But then, of course, during all of that, and not too long after COVID, I developed this pain in my back. And as every surgeon knows, we deal with aches and pains all the time, right? It's a tough job. It's a very physical
Yep.
job. In cardiac surgery, they're long operations. We don't have fellows in
Mm.
Calgary, so the staff surgeon really does the case from skin to skin. We do have a residency training program, but we don't always have them. So there's a lot of physical involvement in every case. I had this pain and it just wasn't going away, and it just slowly got worse and worse. And I didn't really think much of it because it was a pain in my scapula and my shoulder blade, just under. And again, it would come and go. But then it just slowly got worse and worse. And then it didn't go away. And then I couldn't sleep. And then I was
But let
taking
me, yeah.
anti-inflammatories every day. And
Mm.
it got worse and worse to the point where I started canceling cases because I was like, I haven't slept the whole night and I'm in so much pain. I can't move my arm properly. Like I am not safe to do this case. So I had to cancel. And as you may or may not know, in the Canadian system, we have huge waiting lists of patients and very finite resources. So to cancel someone's operation or not show up for your day in the OR is sacrilege. I mean, it's just like the worst thing you can do. So there was an enormous stress of dealing with this pain and this issue that I didn't know what was going on, with the tension of you have a huge responsibility to show up and look after your patients, right, who need you, and your team that's counting on you, and the resources that are administered, etc. So it created this massive problem for me and got to the point where literally my wife found me on the floor, one morning, and I was in tears because I just could not function. The pain was so bad. And she was like, you need to go see somebody. And I hadn't really told anybody about what was going on. I could never get comfortable. So I was in meetings and I was, doing this all the time. I had a lacrosse ball that I would roll on that spot to
Mhm.
try to like alleviate the pain. And I rolled on the lacrosse ball so much that I was bleeding. Like I eroded all the skin on
Ouch.
that spot. I still didn't really reach out to, maybe I was in denial. I don't know. But that was and I think many surgeons are the same way. You're just so focused on like what you need to do, you kind of don't pay attention to your own needs and your own physical pain, and you are very reluctant to get help. And that spiraled into the point where at one point, so I did end up seeking help and I got on some medications and got some tests done and was starting that process, which helped a little bit to the point where I was back in the OR and operating until I was doing an open heart case and my hand seized and I could not hold the instrument. And I had the heart arrested. I was sewing a bypass, and that was scary, right? Because I could not do the case and in the middle of it. So that was the alarm bell. I called the surgeon on call who came in and finished the case. And that's the last case I ever did.
Wow, that's a lot to unpack right there, Paul. If it's okay with you, I just want to take a moment, acknowledge, and point out some common things and themes that I've seen in
Absolutely.
my journey over the years. For our listeners, just for a little bit of background, Paul and I actually were residents together at the University of Toronto's surgery training program, and I also went through the surgical scientist program that you heard Paul talk about. And Paul, you did not know this, but I actually went into surgery residency wanting to become a cardiac surgeon. So
I did know that.
I did my first rotation, cardiac surgery rotation as an intern at St. Michael's Hospital. I think Dr. Bonneau was still there.
Hmm.
And that was my first surgical rotation. And that's where I experienced my first lower disc herniation. Okay.
Oh my.
That was not enough to deter me from wanting to pursue cardiac surgery. Some other factors happened along the way, and I ended up as an endocrine surgeon, which I'm very happy about. But let's kind of backtrack here. You're at the peak of your career. You're, a superstar on all fronts in academia. You're like hitting it out of the park in every phase or every, I should say, facet of academia. And then you're experiencing this pain, but you have, as you said, this sense of responsibility. You don't know what it is, but it's hard to get time to even go and get things investigated.
Exactly.
And you're thinking, well, I'm going to keep going. And this is a story that I've heard all too often. Surgeons, there is a silent epidemic of work-related musculoskeletal injury, and it's interesting. Surgery is not a profession that we typically think of as leading to work-related injuries such as C-spine disc problems, lower back disc problems, shoulder degenerative problems, etc. We think of this more in sort of blue collar workers, like maybe construction workers. But there are actually some published studies that show that rates of neck and back pain among surgeons are higher than those reported in apprentice construction workers. So that was eye-opening to me, and I'm sure eye-opening to many people, during their journey. So why was it that you didn't feel like you could tell your partners, even, I mean, not even the leadership, what you were going through so that you could kind of get the help that you needed to figure out what was going on and maybe get treatment before the point you found yourself on the floor or your wife found you on the floor, or the point that you were in the OR and suddenly you had hand weakness and couldn't finish the case that you were in?
Yeah, it's a great question. I've spent a lot of time thinking about that. So this
Mhm.
was to orient the listeners. This
Mhm.
was 2 years ago that I had the incident in the OR,
I see.
and I have
Mhm.
not been able to operate for the last two
Great.
years. So after
Mhm.
that incident, I had an MRI of my neck. It showed, severe degeneration of my cervical spine with a compressed C7 nerve root. 2 weeks
Mhm.
later, a neurosurgeon operated on me, removed the disc, did a single level fusion. And unfortunately, I never fully recovered due to ongoing sort of nerve injury, which has prevented me from going back to surgery. So just to orient kind of people
Yeah.
where I'm at, and it was two
Mhm.
years ago. So I've had 2 years to think about this, and I've certainly spent a long time thinking about it. And during that 2 years, I became clinically depressed and needed treatment for that. We can get into that later. To answer your question, why did I not feel I could say anything? And I really think it's the culture, right? It's just this surgical culture we have of never showing weakness. That's part of it. Another one is we've trained ourselves to ignore our bodies, right? And
Yeah.
I think this is a really important one where if you think about, when you're doing surgery, if you have an itchy nose, you can't touch it. If you have a headache, you've got an important job to
Mm.
do and you suck it up and you get through the case. And aches and pains are pretty normal in surgery, right?
Part of the job, right?
It's part of the
Yeah.
job. We all have it, and we accept that. Like athletes, right? You're in pain, but it's
Mhm.
game time, and you show up and you perform, and you're going to perform at your expense, right? And there are no breaks, right? You can't halfway through a cardiac surgical case say, well, I'm going to go stretch or lie down, or you just can't do that. So I think that's part of it, is that we ignore our pain, we ignore our bodies. We're trained to do that. We're trained to be stoic. That's the culture. And I truly believe in surgery, we still have a shame and blame type of culture where
Yeah.
if you speak up and you show weakness, you will be shamed, right? Your colleagues will talk. There's a sense too of if you speak up, it's not just you, right? You're affecting your whole group, right? You work as a team, you got to
Hmm.
cover 24/7. And if
Yeah.
someone goes down, it means more work for everyone else. And we've all lived through that where someone is off, whether it's vacation or sick or,
Yep. Yep.
they're in trouble. It's like, yeah, you feel bad for them, but you feel bad for yourself too, because you're like, oh no, this means now I've got to cancel my vacation, or I've got to take more call, or I've got to take more
Hmm.
OR time. And you're
Yeah.
already juggling everything and working at full capacity. So I think the strain on everyone else means that you're afraid to say anything because your colleagues may not be as supportive as you need them to be, because they're going to immediately look at it and say, what does this mean for me? Because we're all
Right.
so overworked and we're all overstressed and we're all running on fumes and pushing it to the limit.
Yeah.
So
There's
right,
no,
that creates,
yeah.
yeah, it creates
Yeah.
a situation where it's hard to be compassionate when you're trying to survive yourself. And I
Yeah.
think that's a reflection of our entire healthcare system right now.
Yeah.
It's
There's no
self,
give. There's no
yeah,
give.
there's
Yeah.
no give, there's no reserve, right?
Yeah.
And we lack the humanity and compassion piece because we're all running on those fumes.
Hmm.
And I think that's a big part of it. I really do. And maybe it's that part of our character as surgeons too, where we just don't want to we don't want to admit defeat or weakness ever, right? Because we're
Yeah.
proud people, we're accomplished people. We've pushed ourselves to get to where we are,
Hmm.
and we also maybe don't want to admit to ourselves that maybe we've got a physical problem or
Problem.
a mental problem or an emotional problem that might limit us in our careers.
Right. And there is not just, and that last bit that you said, that's a real concern, right? It can affect your employability. Malpractice insurers may not want to cover you. And so then you can't be employed if you've had an injury, right? There is that whole element of stigma, as you described, not wanting to appear weak to your colleagues and to leadership and not have people kind of question your judgment, like, are they doing this because they're in pain? Is that why they're shortening this case or not taking this case on? You don't want to be known as that surgeon. But there's also that real fear of, well, if you've had long training, you've got loans to pay, what's going to happen to, your finances, your employability? You're not even thinking sort of the broader things like what's going to happen to the patients trying to access care. You were thinking about it in the moment, but some people they can't even get that far, right?
I think you're 100% right. The stigma and the potential consequences are huge because
Yeah,
you've invested and sacrificed your whole life to be able to do this special thing.
exactly.
And we're in some ways, many of us are one-trick ponies that way. And
Yeah,
I'll give an example of that later, but the fear of losing your practice is massive, right? Like
yeah.
will your team trust you, right? If they think that there's
Yes,
something a little bit wrong with you, you're not at the
wrong with
top of
you.
your game,
Hmm.
is your team going to trust you? Are they going to want to work with you? Are they going to whisper in the hallways about you? Will you get
Mm-hmm.
referrals, right? What if the referring
Mm-hmm.
doctors find out that, well, Paul's actually got something wrong with his arm? Are they going to trust me enough that they're going to refer me patients? What if the
Mm-hmm.
patients find out that there's something physically wrong with you? They're terrified to undergo open heart surgery. It's life and death for them. Are they going
Mm-hmm.
to avoid you? Like these are the things that you think about. And those are scary thoughts, right? Or is the licensing, do you have to report this to whoever gives you your license, which often you do? And what are they going to do about it? Are they going to shut you down? Or are they going to limit your operation? Are they going to tell you you can't do certain operations? The scope of the type of work you do? Are you going to be stuck doing consults and making ICU rounds for the rest of your life and never picking up the scalpel again because of this injury? This is all the stuff that runs through your mind. And some of that is true. That's
No,
not
yeah.
all fake stuff that you think about or delusional thoughts. Those are very real things that can happen.
You shared that through all this, it's been 2 years, you've had a long time to kind of think about these things. So take us back to the part where your surgeon says you have this thing and you're going to need surgery. What was going through your mind at that time? I'm sure you were hopeful that, okay, this will fix the problem and I will be able to go back to operating. That's what you're hoping for. But what did the surgeon say? And was your recovery as expected? I know you said that you haven't been able to go back to operating. So was that something that the surgeon had warned you about beforehand, or was this something that you came to find out in the months after?
Yeah, great question. So the expectations I had were that I would have this surgery, I'd be off for 6 weeks, and then I'd be back in action. And of course, you do your homework, you read about it, you speak to people. So my surgeon, who's an outstanding surgeon, and for the record, did a perfect surgery, right?
Hmm.
This is not a problem of the technical operation. And the surgery has
Hmm.
helped me tremendously. Like I was in horrific pain. I'm
Pain.
still have
Mhm.
pain, but it's much more manageable now, and I got my life back. So I'm so grateful for this surgeon who did the work that he did. But he had just operated on a colleague of ours not long before this. So I phoned that person and said, "Hey, like, how'd it go? Tell me what to expect." And that person was back practicing, I
I
think
see.
6 or 8 weeks after surgery. So to me, that was my expectation. And of course, you think, well, if that guy got back in 6 to 8 weeks, I'll be back in 4 weeks because that's how surgeons think, right?
Right, right.
We're all
Everything is a
gonna, yeah,
competition. Everything is a
yeah,
competition.
right,
Yeah.
totally. And it's a badge of honor, right? It's like everyone's got the surgeon story. Oh, well, that surgeon, broke his leg and he like never stopped operating. And this guy
Mm.
got into this accident and he, still had his pick line in and he was, taking call. Like, there's all these heroic stories. And it's part of the myth of being a surgeon and this sort of
Yeah.
strength that we feel we have to achieve. And so that weighs on you, right? It's like I was like, okay, I'm gonna have this surgery, but I mean, I gotta get back like as fast as I can. And I was
Hmm.
willing to do whatever it took, but that's what's in your mind. So it was like completely opposite to what happened, right? Like I'm thinking I'm gonna be back like super fast. And it just wasn't the case, right? Like I was having all these spasms and continued pain, and my right arm was so weak that like when I did go back to work, I couldn't push open the door to get to my office, like the double doors just outside my office. So that's how weak my arm was, which was kind of terrifying, in many ways. And all you can do is the physiotherapy and wait, right? Because nerves take, everyone counseling me, nerves take a long time to heal. And I'm used to in the world of cardiac surgery, like if you're not healed in 3 months, you're not healing kind of thing. Like it's a
Hmm.
different trajectory. But I talked to all my colleagues, these neurosurgeons and neurologists. Of course, we all know people. So I talked to all of them and they're like, no, no, it takes time. Nerves take a year or more. So then I got to a year and it wasn't better. And then I'm worried. I'm like, but it could take 2 years. And, it just keeps going on and on and on. And it was very different from what I expected. And I think that gap between what I expected and what really happened to me created the situation where I spiraled, right? And I got clinically depressed and it got again to the point where my wife had to phone the physician hotline because I was in big trouble. So these things are real, and that's why I've decided to be more open about it and talk about it, because I feel like my
Mhm.
experience is probably not unique. And as I've opened up and started speaking about this a little bit more, which is I think how you became connected to me because you saw some of my posts on LinkedIn and some of my
Mhm.
writing.
Mhm.
I can't tell you how many people have reached out, not just surgeons, but so many people who loved their careers, went all in on their careers, and due to physical injury or other things, had to stop. And the spiral and the unraveling that occurs, the loss of identity, right,
Identity,
was
yeah.
the toughest one. I felt like a ghost. I honestly felt like I was alive but dead, like I was hollow, like I had no purpose. I was like, if I can't operate, I'm not, because I looked at it as if you can't operate and you're a surgeon, you're not really a surgeon, which is probably not the correct thinking, but I think we think that way in surgery, right? And we do speak that way, like, oh, well, that person is a surgeon, but they're not operating, a
They're not
non-operating
operating.
surgeon, right? And they're kind of like this different category of person, right? It's like they have no value. They're not real. They're not a real surgeon. So
Another level of
certainly,
stigma, another level of stigma,
exactly.
right?
And
Yeah.
shame. I mean, you feel
And
like
shame.
shame that this happened to you. And you're thinking, how am I so weak? Why am I so weak that like I always considered I was like sort of an athlete, but athletic person. And, I was into cycling and I could go cycle for like 6 hours straight, 100 miles up and down hills. And like many of us, we're just high achievers and we do all these
Hmm.
things. So I really felt shamed that how could I break down like this? How could my body fail me? How could my neck betray me, right, in this way?
Right.
And you try to make meaning of what happened to you. And unfortunately, we sometimes create these negative attachments or negative meaning, negative thoughts about what happens to us. And I've heard that from other people too, is that especially surgeons, I think, who become injured, they feel shame and they're angry at themselves for what happened, even though it has nothing to do. I mean,
Nothing to
it's
do.
happening because you worked so hard, right? You
Right.
you were dedicated to this craft and you put in so many hours, and the wear and tear on your body is just happens. It's just a normal thing. And for me, because I did all these other things in leadership, in research, blah, 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 I always thought, well, I don't identify so much as just like a cutting surgeon. Like I never thought
I
about
see.
my career as, well, I'm not the guy that did the most cases and that sort of thing. That's not
Hmm.
the way I looked at myself. So I was shocked myself by how much it impacted my own identity. And that's the piece that I'm really trying to maybe try and educate a little bit more about. It's unhealthy, right? This attachment we have as surgeons, this identity we have as surgeons. I'm not saying we should not be proud to be surgeons. We absolutely
Hmm.
should be proud, but we should not be so caught up in the act of doing surgery and being a surgeon. Because let's face it, it's fun to be a surgeon and all the things that
Hmm.
come with it, right? It's phenomenal. But there's so much more to you than just that. I think it's important that we understand that and we appreciate that and we change the culture and have a little bit more of that balance and have a little bit more compassion for each other, and be supportive of each other and a little less competitive so that we can get people through this and not
Through
feel
this.
like you're being pushed out. And it did feel that way for me. Like I felt like I felt like in my group I kind of got pushed out because they didn't
Okay.
need me. Like I wasn't, I couldn't do call, I couldn't do cases. So what good am I to them?
Okay. It's interesting that you say that. Yeah. First of all, Paul, I think I'm going to echo what our listeners are thinking about this, but, thank you from the bottom of my heart and on behalf of this podcast for being willing to talk about these very personal and very painful things. I can hear it in your voice and see it in your face that this is still very hard and very emotional for you. And it will continue to be. And so I appreciate that you're, sharing this with us on the podcast. The second thing that struck me from this last bit that you just shared is that, you said you felt so alone. And then when you wrote about this, The Price of Excellence, that's the article that Dr. Fedak is referring to. It was on LinkedIn and went viral, lots of comments and feedback. And that's where we connected as well, as you said. I have heard this story, unfortunately, many times because of what I'm involved in as part of kind of increasing the awareness of surgical ergonomics and doing some coaching. I'm considered a safe space. So I've heard
Yeah,
this.
absolutely.
I've heard this, that this is how I felt when I was having these symptoms. And then when I realized maybe I couldn't go back and I felt worthless as a person. I have heard people, and I've heard from both male and female surgeons. So this sentiment is very common. I think this is the surgical personality, the surgical culture, all the things that you outlined, that I have had people say that at some point they felt suicidal because if they weren't operating anymore, what
Yeah,
were they? Right?
exactly. That's what I felt.
And yeah, and some of these people didn't have all the other facets of their career as you did.
Right.
You were running a successful research lab. You had already done so much in leadership and had your feet and hands in so many different areas. You could certainly have gone 100% that direction and not given a thought about, well, okay, this some surgeons naturally progress, they stop operating and they spend all
Right.
their time in
Exactly.
administration.
Exactly.
But you highlight that no matter what other things you do, you went into surgery first, you started cutting first, and that always remains a part of your psyche and your identity. And I felt not to the same extent, but similarly, I'm like, what if I can't operate? What am I? Am I
Hmm.
really a surgeon? Is anyone going to say Geeta Lal surgeon? No, they're going to say
Right.
Geeta Lal administrator, chief quality
Right.
officer, something, right? Am I still a surgeon? And that's where having the support of colleagues and friends and mentors matters, because I had a close friend who's a coach who said, wait a second, you think about the people who are in leadership at the American College of Surgeons, right? Do you think of so
Hmm.
and so? Are they not surgeons? I'm like, of course they are. And they're like,
Right.
do you want to know when the last time they held a scalpel was?
Right.
And that's not because of injury. So why this shame, when we
Yeah.
can't kind of do, as you said, that thing that we think we were born to do? So, what I would sort of now maybe ask you, if possible, is from all this pain at the lowest point of, how you were feeling, how did you find your way back and kind of, I realize it's a process, one never really comes to terms with
Hmm.
this, but what then motivated you to sort of use your pain to maybe channel, or maybe channel it differently, to be able to maybe write about it or speak to others about it? I know you've been on another podcast talking about this as
Hmm.
well. So describe how that process worked for you. Who was there along the journey? What kind of support you had, just so that people who might be in the same situation or close to the situation that you were in can gather some hope in their kind of leanest time, when they feel like
Yeah,
there's no hope.
absolutely. Yeah, I mean, what a great question. I think time, the tincture of time heals a lot of things, right? And I think you
Mm.
have to give it time, right? I think that's another thing that we're not great at as physicians, especially surgeons, right? We're not the most patient people. So I
Opposite of
expected
patient, opposite of patient.
exactly, exactly. Yeah, so I think for me, looking back, I wish I was a little more patient with myself in the sense of I felt this need to find a new purpose and maybe completely change my career. And I felt this desperation to latch on to some new meaning about a role or what I was going to do, even though I was doing all these things that were
Mhm.
really great things and wonderful things that I appreciated, but it felt like there was a gap and a hole that I had to fill. And I think, that my advice would be give it time. It may take a year, it may take 2 years, and don't start rage applying to all kinds of different weird things that you feel like are going to be the solution. And I think generally when people go through a huge period of stress, that is often what happens, right? It's like almost when you think about the midlife crisis, like you start just doing all these weird things to try to fill this gap or make yourself feel whole again. And it's probably not the right thing to do. So I think reaching out, talking to people, getting support from therapists, coaches, anybody. I mean, long conversations with my wife, and she's been so supportive through all of
Yeah.
this. That certainly was a huge help, right? So I think the time, the support of other people, and learning how to be easier on yourself. So I had, one of my therapists told me, like, your inner voice is like a 1970s college football coach, right? With the sunglasses and the whistle and the socks up to your knees, screaming at you all the time, saying it's not enough, it's not good enough,
It's not
do
enough.
more,
Yeah.
go
Do
faster,
more.
harder, right? And I think many of us have that inner dialogue that is extremely unhealthy when you're going through something like that. So you
Hmm.
have to learn how to be nicer to yourself and speak to yourself in a different way, because it's just different, right? It's not like your normal sort of career type of dialogue that you have with yourself. So I think that was something that I learned. And I think it's just being patient and kinder to yourself is absolutely something we have to learn and get the resources you need to do that. And I think the other thing was that I learned that you have to let yourself grieve the loss. You have to accept it and you have to grieve it. And what I've learned is that you can't make it go away, right? You don't get over it, right? And I think when really horrible things happen to you in your life, you want to try to just get over it and forget about it and move on, so to speak. And you do to some extent, functionally. But what I've learned is that it's okay to carry it with you, right? It's okay to carry your grief with you. Like, I'm always going to grieve the fact that I can't do another heart surgery. And I just wish I could do one more, right? Like one more great case.
Hmm.
If I
Hmm.
could do one more case, I'd feel so much better. But that's not how life works, right? You don't get to pick and choose the last case. And I think, it's similar to people who retire as surgeons. It's a hard thing to decide when you're going to hang it up. And everybody struggles with that. And, many people hang on a little too long, right? Until they get the tap on the shoulder, like, hey, it's time.
Right.
And it was probably
Yeah.
time 3 years ago, but we all felt uncomfortable telling you, Dr. So and so.
Right.
And
Right.
nobody wants to go through that. But it's the same kind of thing, is that I think people, even who retire, grieve the loss of not being able to do this really special thing. And, I've accepted the fact that nothing will replace this, right? There's nothing I can do now that's ever going to
Hmm.
be the same as looking after a patient, doing surgery on a patient and getting them through the whole journey, and the appreciation and respect that they have for you as a person to do this special thing. Like, I'll never find a replacement for it. And I just have to learn to live with that and make that okay. And I'm certainly finding that my writing and
Hmm.
speaking
Hmm.
about it and maybe connecting with other people who've gone through something similar, I find it helpful. Like, I really do. And I think if me speaking about it and writing about it, and even just like us talking about it now, if it can help a
Hmm.
single person, it sounds cliche, right? But if it can truly help a single person recover faster, make meaning of what's happened to them,
Hmm.
transition a softer landing, that's worth it, right? And that to me, and I've had so many people tell me, hey, this you talking about this and writing about this, you're going to save more lives doing this than you ever could doing 150 heart surgeries a year or whatever it
Wow.
is. And people have told me, you are still fixing hearts, but you're doing it with a different instrument, right? And beautiful thing. I can't tell you
Yeah.
how many beautiful connections I made with other people because
Hmm.
of what's happened. So the lesson there is that life hands you these things and it helps you grow as a person, which I think this really has. And it's allowed me to connect with my inner state and my emotions much more so than I ever had before. And I think it's made me a little bit of a better human being and a more compassionate person, that we're the type of people that if somebody is moving a little slower than us, we see that we feel like they're getting in our way. We have important things to do, and we curse under our breath at them and wish they would just get out of the way instead of feeling for that person and offering a helping hand. And it's not that we're not compassionate people, but we're on the go, we're on the move, we're goal oriented, high achievers. And I think if I've learned something from that, it's gearing down, going from fifth gear to fourth gear, and recognizing your own emotions and being present for the
Present.
people around you. And this is what I talk about is we all want excellence and we all pursue and chase excellence and we build our lives around excellence, but we need excellence with presence, right? And that's
Presence.
important for all the people around us, for our relationships, even our patients need us to be
Mm-hmm.
present for
Mm-hmm.
them. And it's super important for us because if you have presence, you will have an inner state that will allow you to deal with all the things that we have to deal with. Sometimes they're very difficult things in a much better way, in a much safer way, in a much peaceful way. And I think you'll have a better life if you can balance those things. Because I think many of us, whether we'd like to admit it or not,
Mm-hmm.
find out trouble with the balance. And there's a lot of
Right.
tensions in our lives. There's a lot of inner turmoil because of the way we push ourselves and the demands that are placed on us for the work that we do.
Mm-hmm.
So adding an element of presence, I think, is really important. And presence can be achieved many different ways. It doesn't mean you have to become a Buddhist and meditate all day and
Mm-hmm.
change the way you dress. Not that at all. What I've learned is it's a little bit of more self-discovery and spending a little bit of time connecting with your emotional state and recognizing it and appreciating it and showing up in the world in a little bit of a different way. And I think if surgeons could do that better, because you're all so great at what you do, you're amazing technical surgeons and you have an incredible work ethic. But if you could develop a little bit of that presence and match it with your excellence technically and professionally, man, you could change the world because your patients will appreciate that. They will heal better and faster. Your colleagues
Mm-hmm.
will die for you and want to work with you. And I think some of the tensions around in your daily life will seem less important if you can develop that kind of perspective. And I feel like I've developed that perspective, but I had to lose my career to do it. So now,
Right.
if anybody's listening to this, I hope for you that you could get to achieve what I've learned and the state that I'm in now without losing your career in the process.
Well, very well said, Paul, about the presence part of it. It doesn't require us to, as you said, meditate all day, change what we eat or dress.
Hmm.
It's about being there for every moment of our lives, whatever that is, whether it's happy, whether it's sad, whether it's grief. I call it, I had to learn this too, because as you said, none of us are very good at it, and it's a process, and I'm still learning. Feel the feels, whatever they are. We are very good
Yes.
at burying our feels. And it's the personality type that sort of tends to we are so self-critical. If patients only knew, when there's a complication,
Yeah.
how much we've already beat ourselves up, right? We're
Yeah.
so self-critical. And these are the same things that make us excellent technical surgeons and leaders in our field. These are the same things that, when life kind of goes a little bit sideways, become our downfall. But you have shown that through recognition of these things, getting the help that you need, understanding what it means when people are saying you need to give yourself time, grace,
Yes.
self-compassion, the compassion you give your friends and your patients, turn that towards yourself. And these are very difficult for surgeons and other clinicians to do, but especially for surgeons, that it is possible to find fulfillment, joy, purpose. What you were saying about if potentially even helps one other person, that is a whole renewed sense of purpose that has come
Hmm.
about from this horrible thing that you've had to go through, and continue to kind of deal with. I admired you when you were a junior resident and all gung ho about becoming a cardiac surgeon. I admire your career and all the things you've accomplished. And I am in complete awe and have so much gratitude for where you are now in this journey that has brought you in not an easy way to this juncture, but I agree 100% with all the people that have been responding to your posts and explaining, sorry, and writing to you about this, that you will make a huge impact. If you haven't already, you will make a huge impact just by sharing all that you have shared here today. So thank you once
Well,
again
thank
for
you so
that.
much for those comments. And I do want to say how happy I am about the work that you're doing, because when I was going through all of this, I was thinking to myself, man, this happens to so many people. In fact, I'm the fourth person in our group, if you can imagine,
Fourth
that
cardiac surgeon
I'm the
who
fourth
had an
cardiac
issue.
surgeon in our group who developed
Oh,
cervical
wow.
spine degeneration. And
Mm,
a colleague of mine had to stop operating, and he was younger than I was when it happened to him. So this is a common
hmm.
problem. And I was thinking to myself, I can't, but why is there no society like that's dealing with this? And why is there no surgeon who's leading the charge and trying to prevent this? And why are companies not, why is industry not interested in surgical ergonomics and helping advise us? And why is the healthcare system not taking this seriously and looking about how the OR is
Set up. Yeah.
constructed
Yeah.
because I know what happens in ROR. Like we need a new monitor. Somebody
Yeah.
walks in, looks around, where does it fit? And they screw it into the wall, and
Right
that's
there.
where it is.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter
Yeah.
how,
Yeah.
no, there's no consultation, there's no discussion. Nobody,
There's no
seems to
forethought.
care about,
Yeah. Yeah.
us, right?
Yeah.
And, and then here's you. And so I was so happy to find out you're doing this work because it's so needed, right? And I thought about it myself because I didn't know you were doing this. I was like, maybe I should be doing, maybe I should do all of that. And I'm so glad to see that you're doing it, and you're doing it really well, and you're doing it very professionally, and you're a wonderful person to do it. So, we did train together. I did know you. I was more junior than you were. So I looked up to you. And, when you're in training and the residents that are ahead of you, you kind of, look like, is that the kind of, surgeon that I want to be? And you learn from them. And I'll just tell you right now that when I worked with you, I thought very highly of you. And I thought, man, she's really good. I want to be like her. Right. And,
Oh, so
I'm
kind
so
of you.
happy that you're in this space, and you're doing this. And I think your work is critical. And we have to find ways to get you at all the surgical meetings talking about this. And I really think the healthcare system has to stand up and start taking ownership for this problem.
Yeah.
And, somebody like you and others should be coming into every OR and in every program and doing your consulting work and assessing. And I'm amazed that when you showed me the sort of computerized analysis that you have. So,
Right.
like, for
Right.
people listening, I
Right.
hope it's not just people who have been injured that are listening to this, but hopefully
No,
people.
there are many. Yeah. There are others who are
Okay,
interested
yeah.
in avoiding injury.
Yes.
That
So
do
those of
listen.
you
Yeah.
who want to avoid becoming like my story and telling these sad tales on podcasts, which I don't want anyone to be doing that. They should be working with you and doing this video analysis and figuring out ways to prevent it. And of course, we're never going to prevent all of it. But if
Hmm.
you think
Hmm.
about how common this is, and you think about the fact that we're doing nothing, right? So there's a
Hmm.
massive ability for a treatment effect here of even some small things could turn this around for so many people. And even if it's not you become disabled and have to stop your career, that's an extreme case, but at least not be in pain all the time,
Pain.
right?
Right.
Right? Or
Right.
be worried about, like, I used to worry a little bit about when this pain was earlier. I'd worry about certain types of cases because I knew, I'm like, oh man, that's going to hurt. I'm going to suffer
Hmm.
after that. I'm going to do this case. And then for 2 days, man, I'm going to be in big trouble. And
Right.
that weighs on you too. We have a stressful enough career and job and balancing our family lives and everything else that you don't need that, right? So if some of this preventive work that you're doing can even make somebody have less pain and feel more confident and come to work in the best possible shape they can for every patient, that's super important too, and really critical work. So much respect to you for what you're doing. And I think your podcast is really important too, to be able to tell these stories, right? Because
Right.
let's normalize this, that, you just don't hear about it, right? Like if I had known that this was more common, or I'd heard stories like this and people explaining how they felt and what happened to them, which I ended up finding out later as because I met people along the
Mhm.
way. It would have helped me so much, right? I think I would have been able to deal with this so much better.
No, you're absolutely right. And thank you for your kind words. The work has started. We've talked about this through the Society of Surgical Ergonomics, through the Society of Thoracic Surgeons, especially after that paper came out in 2023. It was like the first large-scale survey of thoracic and cardiac surgeons. And 64% reported pain from operating, but it was 70% of cardiac surgeons, 55% of thoracic surgeons. And it was the common injuries we've talked about, C-spine, thoracic spine, and
Hmm.
shoulders. And 90% reported that there was a lack of ergonomic education and support institutionally. So
Hmm.
we can all work at individual levels to prevent our injuries through kind of learning about best practices and things like that. But like you said, there are these two other things, the institution and then our organizations, and then of course the instrumentation piece, which is, the other piece that we're trying to address through the Society of Surgical Ergonomics. This is a young field, so to
Hmm.
anyone who's interested in researching ways to study this better, to improve the situation, new technologies, or implementing well-known, evidence-based recommendations, this field is ripe for study, and you can present your work at any surgical meeting because this is now a hot topic at various meetings because it's such a tangible part of surgeon wellness that we can have an
Hmm.
impact on. And so, I think this is an area of academic interest that is really up and coming. And I think we'll see a lot more work and hear about a lot more research in this area in the coming years. And we will continue to be in touch, and I hope that I can get you involved to at least whatever degree your busy schedule allows in the Society of Surgical Ergonomics as well. I'm always amazed
Fantastic.
at, yeah, I'm always amazed at how quickly time passes when we're having these conversations. But I do want to let our listeners know I will include Dr. Fedak's article as well as his contact info on LinkedIn. He is very open to hearing from anyone via direct messaging if you're going through something like this, or if you just want to talk about, injuries in cardiac surgery, since he might be a cardiac surgery peer for you, etc. Just, and Paul, please, confirm that that is okay if people reach out to you directly.
Yeah, absolutely. 100%.
Okay.
Yeah. You can find me
All
on
right.
LinkedIn. Yeah.
Until then, be safe, take care of yourself, and to all our listeners as well, please take care of your bodies and your minds. They're the only places in which we all have to live. So take care of our homes.
Thank you so much.
Please remember to subscribe to the podcast and follow us on social media, Instagram, X, Facebook, and LinkedIn. We love feedback, so please reach out to us for topics, ideas, speakers, or if you ever want to be a guest on the show. Thank you for listening. To enter your name for the Ergo Angle Deflection Loops and Headlight Combo giveaway, please go to our podcast landing page at www.surgicalergonomics.com/podcast/ and fill out the contact form at the bottom of the page. Choose Other in the drop-down menu and indicate Loops giveaway in the message. We will do a drawing for the winner in December of 2025, so please spread the word among your colleagues and friends who might be in the market for new loops. Thank you.